Last week, Ben Cubby from the Sydney Morning Herald revealed how Australia's car industry has launched a secret campaign to delay the country's transition to electric vehicles and hamper a key part of the nation's climate change plan. The Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries, which represents 39 auto brands, including Tesla, developed the campaign. It aims to limit any new fuel efficiency standards to a level that would leave Australia's car industry with some of the weakest carbon emission rules in the world. The Federal Chamber wants Australia's existing voluntary emissions scheme adopted as the national standard. This would mean new passenger cars sold in 2030 would still pump out an average of at least 98 grams of CO2 per kilometre, compared to European 95 grams per kilometre. If you're thinking, hell no, not on my watch, know that the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries is Australia's peak representative organisation for companies who distribute new passenger vehicles like commercial vehicles and motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, and across them, like 68 brands, about 380 models, and service centres or service dealers rather, of more than 4,000. In a leaked document, the Federal Chamber wants to be seen as a trusted voice in the moderate middle of the climate debate, but behind the scenes it's lobbying policymakers to adopt rules that will preserve petrol and hybrid vehicles for decades to come. To quote the Federal Chamber Chief Executive Tony Webber, "We want a sensible debate predicated on the availability of technology, price points and what Australian consumers want to buy. Not some sort of debate created around we need to do something by 2050 and we want to transition to low emission technology, but you've got to put it in the context of the country you're in. We've had climate wars over a decade. We're late to this party, but you've also got to recognise the Australian context, what Australian consumers drive." So he is right, we are late. We are very late. Europe is on version 6 of emission standards, which requires, not us, car makers to have across the whole fleet certain CO2 levels. Also, they've got petrol standards over there too, so there are things like NOx, sulfur and more have a particular impact. It means that not only are the CO2 emissions 30% less than ours, but also particulate matter that is coming out the exhaust is 10 to 15 times better than ours too. For Australia, that means poor health outcomes, more expensive fueling costs, and motorists lumped with vehicles that actually cannot be sold in Europe. The document states they want a mandatory new car CO2 regulation in line with the FCAI voluntary standard. And folks, that begs the question, why? Why do they not want to bring cleaner, cheaper vehicles to Australia and not introduce an internal combustion engine car ban? The answer is simple: service and manufacturing costs. When compared to electric vehicles, petrol, diesel and hybrid vehicles are inherently more complex and costly to service and repair. A typical internal combustion engine has around 150 moving parts and 200 that need to be maintained and replaced when they wear out. When we incorporate petrol tank, engine, transmission, gearbox and exhaust, that figure grows to more than 2,000 parts. Now add to that a small battery, an interchange device that allows the electric motor and a small little battery to actually run a hybrid vehicle. You've now got a very complex machine that is way more expensive to service than even a petrol version or diesel version. Now, compare that to a typical battery electric vehicle, which, depending on which one you choose, there's fundamentally just 4 bits. The battery, the motor, one gear, and the shaft connecting it to the wheels. That's it. It's extremely simple and very easy to maintain. The most significant service cost for an electric car could be the battery, but we're now seeing hypermilers achieve 1 million kilometers on one battery, with only 10% loss of range. That would take you, me, typically about 84 years to do. Electric motors, well, they're proven and been helping society for more than 100 years. This Australian-owned 1974 Enfield 8000 electric vehicle has the same motor in it, meaning it's 48 years going and still strong. Sure, there are service costs for electric vehicles. Some have to have the 500 mils of transmission oil changed every 4 years, along with maybe the coolant to keep the battery healthy and happy. They know that EVs have extremely low maintenance costs. All you need to do is change wipers and tyres, top up windscreen fluid, and that's pretty much it for your annual inspection and servicing. Compare that to servicing a ute, SUV or four-wheel drive that's got a petrol or diesel hybrid powertrain. Typically $500 to $1,000 per year. Changing out one of many hundreds of bits that experience high friction, heat, and other things that make ICE vehicles less efficient over time and more expensive to repair. It's disappointing the FCAI has written this paper. I'm unsure if the members of the FCAI were even aware of it, because the board and the people who make up that sort of higher level have written this, I would guess, separate to the companies who actually constitute as members, and of which, Tesla's one of them. But what are they doing here? They're actually prolonging our CO2 footprint. Most Australian cars last 15 years, so we need to get the last petrol car, diesel car off our roads by 2035. But we need it sooner than that, absolutely sooner than that. We need fuel standards, and if we need fuel standards, then you can't be having the garbage cars that we currently get in Australia. And we need to provide cheaper forms of transport, and the only way to do that is to bring choice to this country. We only get the sloppy seconds for the rest of the world because we don't have fuel standards, we don't have emission standards, and this is what we all need, and the FCAI is exploiting us on this. So when you are in the market for a new car, know that when you go to a legacy car maker, very likely the industry that's supporting them wants to keep you poorer. They want to keep the world hotter. They want to make the health for everyone worse. So try, if you can, to get a battery electric vehicle. Support the right technology that will mean you actually have far fewer running costs, service costs, and is way better for the environment. If you enjoy content about technologies like electric vehicles, please do consider subscribing. It's absolutely free. If you want to see regular news, polls, and other stuff that you don't get here on YouTube, join me on Patreon, where you get all this and a lot more from as little as $2.50 per month. And as per usual, you be good and you be green.